All right, y'all, let's talk this Diddy case. I'm going to jump right into it. I'm not going to hold anything back. I'm not going live. I'm going to record this. If you guys are hearing something in the background, it's the TV. Hey, listen, let's go ahead and get into it. Okay, so I've been trying to keep up with this case in the evenings after work, playing it, listening to everybody kind of give the blow by blow, play by play in the evenings. Is how I've been unwinding before I go to sleep, right? I pray first and I go to sleep, then I turn on the Diddy stuff. So, the usual suspects, Nancy Grace. Let me tell you guys a good channel, you guys, if you guys want to get some real insightfulness to it. And I chuckled because the gentleman's name, he's a podcaster named Armand Wiggins. He has been doing an amazing job. Here's another podcast called Rotten Mango, not Rotten Tomatoes, Rotten Mango. Oh man, she has been phenomenal. These podcasters have been throwing down, and they add a little level of levity to it. You know what I mean? So it's not just boring details. You're getting the real deal. So I've been keeping up with that. A lot of you guys know I'm a little bit of a nerd like that. I like legal stuff. I probably should have been a legal eagle myself. So I'm fascinated by these cases. And obviously, just like most people, even if you don't want to be fascinated by the Diddy case, you're going to be somewhat fascinated because, hey, all of us, all of us have come up knowing or liking some Diddy song, whether that's, hey, all about the Benjamins, stuff he was doing with, the late, great, notorious B.I.G., Biggie Smalls, you know what I mean, with Total. I mean, you just, Diddy was that guy at one point, you know what I mean? And so, we all remember when he was kicking it with J-Lo and stuff like that. So, these people like Diddy, you can even say the same things about R. Kelly. These guys have been the soundtrack of certainly of Generation X. Okay, they're the Gen X soundtrack. And these guys themselves are Gen Xers. Okay. So, it's hard to not want to, even if you don't want to kind of keep up with it, you go, man, but I remember that song. We was stepping in the name of love, and you reminded me of Majid Kales, and so there's so many levels to this. There's so many striations of how we can look at these cases, even the Bill Cosby, and I know there's always that racial factor. Well, are they trying to take down a black man? I'm going to get into some of these levels of this tonight. And I do want to draw cross references between Cosby case, R. Kelly's case, the Diddy case. There are similarities. Obviously the most stark and obvious one is, the fact that you're talking about three black guys, but not just three black guys who all three of them have been very iconic, not just in the African American community, even in, just in mainstream pop culture and in that zeitgeist, right? So again, we all grew up with them. You don't have to be black to, to know what it was like watching the Cosby Show or, listening to it's the remix Ignition, hot and fresh out the kitchen, mama rolling in my. I mean, come on. We all remember this stuff. And you grow up listening to that music, dancing to that music, watching that TV show, and you get it reminds you. I think this is why it's so hard for people to accept celebrities as being something separate and apart from the image and the persona of what we see and receive from the from the presentation of media, television, movies, music videos, you know what I'm saying? The radio, it's hard to see those people like that because that's the only way we see these people, but at the end of the day, it's hard for just the regular everyday public, like, man, could this guy really be that bad? Could this lady really be that bad? Could this person really be that bad? Do you know what I'm saying? And I think, let me just throw Harvey Weinstein in there, not to throw him in as any kind of token white guy, but I think this is the reason why Harvey Weinstein, or is it Weinstein? Yeah, I think it's Weinstein, Harvey Weinstein. You guys will correct me on that. I think this is the reason why, for what he was doing, and alleged of doing, and he was convicted of these things. Okay, so these allegations are no longer just allegations. That he has been convicted with, these felonies. Okay, but I think the reason why, in so many ways, it was the public really didn't push back on that, and I know it was at the height of the Me Too movement. But I think the reason why the public didn't push back on it, because if you were not an industry person, okay, or a person who kept up, oh, that's a Harvey Weinstein movie, the Weinstein brothers. I know he has a brother, a Weinstein. I hope I'm saying that right. Y'all know what I'm saying. But you know what I mean? It's like, unless you're a person who kept up with things like that, or you're a person who is in the industry, who is Harvey Weinstein? You're like, okay, it's just some old guy, in Hollywood. Da, da, da. And I think it had less impact on the public for all the things I'm saying. We didn't grow up knowing who a Harvey Weinstein was and looking at him in his face and seeing his expressions. And, he made great movies that we all love, but, it was that level of separation, from the public. And I think that's why a lot of times, dare I say it, why I think a lot of times celebrities and otherwise famous people, I think this is why sometimes this is just me, y'all. I think that a lot of times they are very much prone to nefarious activities and egregious behavior. Why? Because they know that they have an edge. Okay, they have an advantage that most people don't have. I mean, if you're Joe Schmo and plain Jane, and you go out and do something, people are going to say, oh yeah, you did it. Why? Because don't nobody know you, don't nobody care, right? So it's that level of anonymity that makes people feel anything is possible for you to do something. But this is the reason why I think it's hard for, celebrities and, musicians and actors and actresses and, comedians, and even, you could even throw in here, pastors. You're looking at that, what they call that cult of personality. Sometimes politicians, right? Athletes, sports celebrities. Anytime people have that level of visual public prominence, it's hard to get people to see this person as something else other than that. Oh, like, man, you just my football hero. Oh wow, you was my famous, whatever. So, oh, you like the great pastor who preached the word. It's hard to see that, or Father so and so. It's hard, Bishop so and so. It's hard for people to come to grips with that, because we fall in love with that persona. But what we forget is these people are real people behind the scenes, including your pastors, including your priests, including your bishops. These people are real people behind the scenes. And they're prone to all of the human fallibility and frailty and fallen nature. Y'all don't get me preaching on here now. That we all could be prone to and are prone to, just being an evil flesh. Come on, man, we got to get real with this. And I'm going to throw the word in here. The Bible said there is no good thing in the flesh. So we have to remember that, no one can be put beyond that. It's hard for people to grasp that. Oh, my, so-and-so would never do that. And you don't know that, and this is why even on a personal level, non-celebrity, it's hard for people to even embrace or accept the fact that their most intimate and close loved ones could be prone to doing things. How many times have we all turned on the news, and nightly news or morning news, and so-and-so blew up 5 buildings and, took the lives of so-and-so, or, sexually, violated, so-and-so. And then they're interviewing the people and they go, oh my God, I can't believe that. he was such a good guy. Oh, I can't believe she did that. She was such a, you know, because the more intimate, we were only seeing one side of people. And everybody, me, you, all of us are multidimensional beings, guys. We're multidimensional. And it's not that we're code switching or necessarily putting on airs. There are people who do that, and they're called narcissists. But I'm saying just moving it in everyday world, everybody, you know, I'm gonna be one way with my parents. I'm gonna be another way with my spouse. I'm gonna be another way with my friends. I'm gonna be another way with my children. I'm gonna be another way, with my boss. Do you understand what I'm saying, guys? So I may be another way in public. Now, that doesn't mean that you're being, you're intentionally being different people, but you know that there's a certain level. I'm going to be another way with my pastor, my religious leader. So again, I think that people tend to forget that, these celebrities are just people. And at the end of the day, I don't care how much we love what they put out, through their wonderful and God given talents and gifts, including your pastors. Yes, I'm including pastors in that because we've seen where, there's been some high profiles, quote unquote, celebrity pastors. I don't even think no pastor should even be a celebrity, but there are because we celebrate these people and we lift them up. I mean, really, the only person we should be lifting up is Jesus Christ. I'm talking about from a Christian and a spiritual standpoint. Okay. But a lot of times we're lifting up people. We're lifting up religious leaders. We're lifting up political leaders. We're lifting up people. Okay. And there is a level of giving honor to where honor is due. I'm not saying we shouldn't do that, but I am saying that we should also keep within good context and within good conscience. At the end of the day, your pastor is just a man. Okay. That wonderful evangelist, she's just a woman. That awesome prophetess, she's just a woman. That politician you love so much, they're just a person. And I think a lot of times we get away from that because everybody is looking for that hero. Let Jesus be your hero. He's the hero. He's the hero that won't let you down. He's the hero that doesn't disappoint. But anybody separate and apart from him, man, including me, you can't hang your hat on that. Okay, so let's get on into it. I just had to kind of sidebar to kind of lay some of the layers here of why I think there is this disconnect. Okay, why people find it hard to believe that they're celebrities and people of prominence could be guilty of sometimes the most heinous acts. And I think this is also the reason why it's hard a lot of times to convict these people, because again, who wants to convict somebody like, man, I grew up watching this person. I don't want to convict that person. So that means that the evidence that has to come forward, I mean, it has to be ironclad. And to that point, this is why I'm telling you all, I'm just not sure. Based on the information that I've been reading and hearing and seeing and listening to about this Diddy case, I'm telling you, man, these prosecutors, they better listen. It was an old song, tighten up on your backstroke. Looking for that good stuff. Tighten up on your backstroke. I'm serious because to me, from what I've been gathering and listening to and, just taking in from all of these different, elements of people who are actually in the courtroom every day, from reporters to podcast news and things like that. And, social media outlets. Listen, to me, Diddy, and we like I said, we'll do the cross comparison between the R. Kelly case and the Bill Cosby case. But with Diddy, from what I've heard so far, I've heard a lot of salacious, horrific, hideous, horrendous. I mean, just vile. I mean, you could just any word you can think of, deviant. Lascivious. Just everything, perverse, debased. I mean, you could just go on and on with any adjective you can think of. It has been off the chain hearing so many of the disgusting details that have come out in that case. And truly, 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 I don't know how Sean, quote unquote, P. Diddy Combs, Love, whatever he's calling himself this day, I don't know how this guy will even ever bounce back from it. Because here's what I'm thinking. Even if Diddy, Sean Diddy Combs, Sean P. Diddy, Puff Daddy, Love, even if this guy, okay, gets exonerated, gets set free, I don't know how he comes back from it. And what I mean come back from it is this. I would strongly suggest, Sean, go get you a wife, go take those kids of yours, go be a father, go be a man of your elder age, and truly, whatever monies you got left, put it to business ventures and investments and live the rest of your life praying and getting all the help and good therapy and good love you need from those who love you best and know you best. And just do that. Just do that, sweetheart. Because the reason why I'm saying that is this. If Diddy gets off, I can't see him returning to the public square just back to, act bad, act bad, act bad. I can't see it. And the reason why I'm saying that is this, is because so many things that have come out in this case, I'm gonna just be real with you. They said people were gasping in the courtroom. People, literally clutching their pearls, literally dropping their eyes, literally eyes tearing up. I mean, the things that that you're hearing about, it's just, it's just beyond the pale. And no human is perfect. I'm sure if somebody put a camera in everybody's bedroom, there's things that I think sometimes we all have been guilty of participating in things that say, ooh, I don't want nobody to see that if that came out there. But I also know that everybody does things at different levels. And I think some people have no level. They have no level to what they do in their personal life. And being an adult, you have that right to do that. But I think that here's where Diddy is getting into a lot of trouble, and where there's these areas, and no pun intended, shades of gray, is that when you are just going to the max, there's like no limit. There's just a bottomless pit, like straight to the pit of hell. There's no limit. And you guys may remember, I was on Facebook a few weeks back, like, guys, get some scruples about you in the bedroom. You gotta, and I'm not saying you gotta do it. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. But I'll tell you this, it opens you up, okay, to surprise. What's that thing on social media? Surprise. It's gonna open you up to surprise. Because today's 50 Shades of Grey could be tomorrow's 50 years in prison. Because you didn't move in a spirit of wisdom in your personal intimate settings. And listen, as imperfect of a person as I've been, and still am, and probably will always be until the good Lord take me on home, the thing that I definitely thank God for, if nothing else, I thank God sometimes for having the presence of mind to say, hey, wait a minute. This is going too far. I'm not going there. I don't want to go there. Why I'm not going there? We're not going there. You can go. I'm not going there. And I think that a lot of that comes with, it gets real deep, and deep in psychology and spiritual matters, and you have to then really look at the pathology of why a person would just, there's no level to what you will or will not do. Because usually when somebody is taking it to that level, the levels that Diddy went to and the levels that he and, these individuals, including Cassie, bless her heart, you're dealing with something that's deeper than just the act of sex. Because at that point, I feel like this ain't even about sex. Sex is pleasurable. Romance is fine. All that stuff is great. But when you start getting into stuff, it's always struck me, okay, at this point, this ain't even about y'all having sex. This is about something else. And when you really start digging deeper into that layer and it's like an onion, you start peeling back that layer, then you really start thinking like, man, this is tied into some level of abuse, somewhere, somehow, some level of trauma. Okay, because at this point, this is not just having a sexually satisfying experience. At this point, this is about something else, and this is about feeding a beast. This is about feeding a insatiable demonic kind of thing at this point. Because even though your body may be feeling some levels of pleasure, there's also the issue of, at the same time too, it don't take all of that. So at this point, this is about something else. And what I would dare charge is, if you could go back and really have a conversation with Cassie or Diddy or even R. Kelly. I know for a fact R. Kelly had mentioned that unfortunately, he had been sexually violated and abused by his elder sister. And unless you get the deliverance, and I mean true deliverance in Jesus' name, y'all, and people say, oh, I don't believe it. Well, guess what? I know deliverance is real. Okay. You know what I'm saying? But unless you get true deliverance, true help, the Bible say first natural and spiritual. I believe that you got to get help, because the Lord got all the power. He could take it all away. You know what I mean? All the way. And I believe that. But I also do know that God also have natural help here too. He have doctors here. He have, therapists here. You know what I'm saying? He have what we need here. All things that pertain unto life and godliness. So I'm definitely a born again Christian. I'm not averse to people going to therapy. Now, as a Christian, I believe in Christian therapy. You know what I'm saying? Because I definitely, like I say, myself, I have had a session or two. And I think it's really great. I think it definitely serves a purpose. So I'm saying that unless a person go through that level of spiritual, godly deliverance and healing, what Jesus said, wilt thou be made whole? Okay, wilt thou be made whole? Unless you're going through that with all of the help and what you need, man, only thing you're going to do is wax worse in that thing. And you're going to exacerbate it into that trauma. And you're going to look for other people that, and I hate to use this word because it's becoming really common and kind of hackneyed now. You're going to look for other people that you can trauma bond with. Okay. So listening to this Diddy and Cassie thing, that's what I kept like exploding before my eyes. Is like, okay, these two people were trauma bonded. And I've heard some other people say that. And I think people, some people say, oh, that's not a real thing. Trauma bonding is a real thing. Because people absolutely do bond over trauma. Because it's a very deep-seated, it's a very deep, emotional, visceral place. And so I would almost be curious to know if Cassie as a child and if Sean as a child, if either of those people experienced some levels of sexual harm, sexual abuse, childhood, and I'm not talking about from anybody necessarily in their family, because sometimes we think it's somebody in the family. Sometimes it could be other people in school, it could be anywhere. But I'm curious to know, did they experience some level of that? Because I'm a firm believer when people are going through those levels of those things, this is somebody who's operating in a space of being totally unhealed, and they're operating from a space of damage to do the things that they're doing. I mean, even people that I would say that get into, the world of pornography, the acts that you see, a lot of times, and a lot of times, there's been people who've told their testimonies who've come out of the world of porn. in the world of escorts and the strip clubs and things like that. If you follow those people, that's why I say, man, a lot of them, man, they really, they really have been harmed at some place in some station in their life, whether that was if they was a small child, a teenager, sometime even as a young adult, sometimes even as a full-fledged adult. But there's been some level of damage there, which is also the reason why it's almost like it goes hand in hand. When you see that type of level of sexual depravity, there is also the heightened usage of alcohol. There's alcohol abuse. There's drug use. You know what I mean? There's narcotics. And those things go hand in hand. Why? Because again, God made us as a living soul. There's only so much that you know that you could even do. And without your own spirit, your own soul, your own mind telling you like, hey, this is no. And so in order to deal with that, in order to be able to function, you need something that's going to take the edge off, that's going to level you off and help you cope with these things. So again, I would want to know that because, clearly, even the night that they said that they arrested, Diddy, I think that was in September of last year. The night they arrested him, they said that even the hotel that he was staying in, I mean, there was, they showed the pictures, baby oil and all that. And I'm like, okay, for somebody doing this, man, this is somebody who's been really damaged. And that's no excuse, right? That's no excuse, for him with these allegations. That's no excuse. But again, what has happened between him and Cassie, those aren't allegations. Those are realities of what happened, So I'm thinking here, we're dealing with a lot of damaged and broken and harmed people. And a lot of times when people have experienced those heightened levels of sexual abuse and sexual violation, and without getting the spiritual help and the mental and emotional and sometimes even the physical help that they need to be made whole, these are some of the things. This is the paradigm from which they operate, because that's just not healthy. And I think as a society, I think we're so extreme either way. Either we're completely demonizing these people and we're on witch hunts and we want to go back to the 1800s and, where we're burning people at the stake and, burning them, for being, sexually salacious and lascivious and craven. Or we're just, how we are now. Well, hey, everybody's a freak. Everybody's free to feel good. And hey, it doesn't matter, hey, everybody's freaky. No, well, everybody's not freaky. But then I even think about that. Who wants to be known as freaky? Listen, I've heard people say that like it's like chewing a piece of Wrigley's bubble gum. Popping the Mentos. It's crazy to me. Yeah, well, I'm a freak. Huh? I'm a freak. What was that song last year? Can anybody match my freak? Listen, like y'all actually calling yourselves freaks. And it's crazy to me, right? And I heard somebody say we need to bring back shame to society. Again, I don't know if we need to bring back shame, but I think we definitely need to bring back intelligence. And I think we definitely need to bring back common sense. And I think we definitely need to bring back godly morals. But at the same time, you can't impose that on people. And we have to be balanced and we have to be mature to understand you can't impose things on people. So I get it. I get the balance of that, but also looking at it, yeah, man, that's kind of wild, that people just, yeah, I'm a freak. I'm like, yeah, I'm freaky. I'm like, what? You actually saying that? That's like saying, oh, hey, I'm a Baptist. I'm a Catholic. Yeah, I'm a Pentecostal. You know what I'm saying? Like, what? You know what I mean? I don't get it. Okay. But let's get more into this. And we're already into it, y'all, but I want to really take my time with this tonight. I'm not even going to sit here and say I'm going to be quick, because I'm not. I want to really take my time. So why do I think that Diddy is going to possibly get off and walk? From what I've been hearing, and again, y'all, there's this what 7 more weeks of this. I think we're what now the second week. I understand it's going to be what about an 8 week ordeal, so we got about 6 weeks away. I do understand that they're trying to wrap this thing up in early July, maybe around the 4th of July holiday, but that's right around the corner, right? So, you're talking about 6 weeks out, when by that time, good Lord willing, we're deep into the summer months. Right now we're in late spring. So, we'll be, as they say, knee deep in the hoopla with that, right? Of summertime. So there's only a few more weeks out, 6 more weeks, tons of witnesses and experts and expert witnesses and, all that kind of stuff that has to come forth. But what I am really concerned about is what I'm hearing and what I'm not hearing. Matter of fact, I'm more concerned about what I'm not hearing than what I'm hearing. I'm hearing again, a lot of lascivious activity, a lot of craven, depraved, debased, debauched, bacchanalian, uh, Babylonish. I mean, we could just go on and on. Romanesque, ancient Greek kind of stuff. I mean, you're just hearing it all. Sodom and Gomorrah kind of stuff. You're hearing it all. Full tilt boogie with this stuff. But at the end of the day, doing all of those things does not quantify a person. Again, we're not in the 1800s and the 1700s when you burning people at the stake because of their sexual activity. This ain't the Scarlet Letter where you could just put an A on a person's chest and say, hey, adulterer, hey, this person is, we just don't, we just don't live in that kind of world and society, so you can't arrest people and you can't hold people in jail for those types of things when it is truly levels of consent. Okay. Now you got some people who are so debauched, they'll mess with children or people who are disabled or people who are otherwise incapacitated or levels of vulnerability. Now these people, yeah, we still bring them and hold them to accountability. But I'm talking about when you're talking about adult people, grown people, no matter how outrageous or ungodly and depraved their activity may be, if you got two adults or multiple adults and they're agreeing to all tag team up and do this weird and demonic stuff, because to me it's demonic. Let's just say what it is. I know some of you all may get offended if that's your lifestyle. I'm sorry. Okay? But not sorry. You may think my lifestyle is what you may think. But I'm saying when you're doing things like that, in my opinion, and I'm entitled to that, in my opinion, that is demonic behavior. It's just demonic to me. Now, that may not be demonic to you or nobody else. It's demonic behavior. But the reason why I'm saying that is this, because even though it's demonic behavior, in my opinion, guess what? That still doesn't mean a person doesn't have a right to operate in demonic behavior. Is insofar as and as long as those adults are consenting to the act and consenting throughout the entire act of that. And I think this is where Diddy, the case does get into the weeds a little bit for himself. Because what I kept getting about the Cassie thing, and Cassie herself, let me tell y'all what I did love about Cassie being on that stand a week ago. A lot of people didn't like the fact that Cassie didn't come across as this, pathetic. What I mean is this: people wanted Cassie to really be like, yes, Sean grabbed me and he raped me and he just held me up in chains and And Cassie, I'm going to tell you why I think she was a really good witness. She came across very authentic and very transparent. She was like, yeah, when I started out, I was down for this stuff. And I was revving to go. Man, y'all know I be thinking about songs, revved up like a deuce, another runner in the night. I mean, she was revved up. And she said that. And to me, I said, that's why I believe Cassie. That's why I still tip my hat to Cassie. Because to me, Cassie definitely strikes me as the person to say, hey, you know what? I was down for it. I was down for the tomfoolery and all of the shenanigans and all the weird activities. But this thing went beyond even what I wanted it to go to. And when I didn't want it to go there, there was Sean didn't let me have a point of relenting or a point of no return. Now, somebody may say, well, no, Pat, that's not true. If you know me by my middle name, Pat, if you know me by my full name, Lucy, you guys may say that's not true. That's not true. Because Cassie was ripping and running with guys she wanted to rip and run with. You know, Sean was ripping and running with ladies and whoever he wanted to rip and run with. So he wasn't holding her captive. And I don't mean it from that perspective. According to Cassie's own testimony, she said that there was definitely times where she said, nah, I don't want to do that. You know, no, I'm not feeling good about that. You know, hey, I'm ovulating, quote. This is a real quote. I'm ovulating, and he said, well, can we just kiss? And, and I think there's so much gray area to it. You know what I'm saying? I think that because, and even for, let me throw a bone at Diddy. I think what's troubling people is that with this case, it's actually revealing Diddy as, okay, this guy is totally, his morals are shot. I mean, the bar is in hell. The bar is so low with this guy's moral, it's in the pit of hell. Literally, it's in the pit of hell. Okay? Hopefully he can elevate and raise that bar. In Jesus' name. He said he's reading his little Bible in court. Read on. Come on, Sean. But my point, though, of that is this. Beyond that aspect of it, what you find out, even from Cassie's testimony, there was times where he was like, okay, well, do I have permission? Can we do this? Can we do that? And I think what's troubling people is that we don't see the clear-cut bad guy and the clear-cut good guy here, or good gal here. And I think that's kind of what people like to see. All of us, we all want that perfect bad guy and that perfect good guy. Or that perfect bad girl and that perfect bad good girl. You know what I mean? And look at, that's why you got to be careful what's in the name. You can be speaking some bad boy. Look at the name of his company, Bad Boy Entertainment. You better be careful what you're putting on yourself. Bad boy. Okay, but sometimes people be naming stuff after stuff that they know that they really doing too, right? So we a lot of people are kind of becoming frustrated with this case. And I'm just based off of comments and talking to people, on the street, and myself, and, people in my family and personal friends, and even just looking at comments, through my socials and people that, just kind of talking in general, it's like people are somewhat frustrated. And I think people are going to get a little fatigued and burnt out on this case in the next 6 weeks. If the prosecutors, in my opinion, do not step it up. And like I say, tighten up on their backstroke. Because here's the deal. Anytime you got where there's no particular, even if we say, okay, Sean is the bad guy. But we see moments, okay, we see these vignettes, these moments, these strange occurrences where this horribly bad guy, insofar as we want to, paint him, well, there was times where he's asking Cassie permission. There's times where, he's looking as if he's being somewhat, accommodating to her and, being relenting, So we see that. So he's an imperfect bad guy. Because he doesn't always come across as totally the bad guy. Like there was even something where I think one guy had hit a woman and he said, now, we don't hit women. So like what? And yet this is the same guy who's stomping Cassie in the hallway. So I think what people are grappling with is that Sean, that Diddy is not coming across as this 100% bad guy. Conversely, Cassie has not come across as 100% the good girl. And I think this gets into human nature. We want people to be what we're not. And this is what I opened up with, right? My opening statement, or, monologue, if you guys want to call it that, is that none of us is 100%. We're human. And so the worst human being is going to have some really good, awesome days where you may say, that's a really nice person. And this person may be, the devil's child, 100%. And then conversely, you may see somebody who may be God's child. And you may say, that person is straight out of the pit of the hill. You know what I'm saying? So no human being is perfect. And it comes down to so many different elements and so many different circumstantial, you know, situations, You may see a person who really is truly a child of God. And, maybe they're having a bad day. And you cut them off in traffic. They may flip you the bird. They may cuss you out. That doesn't make it right. That's a child of God who has to grow. Hands up, I gotta grow. I'm not gonna flip you off in traffic, but hey, I'm definitely said some things like, you son of a, why, kind of like that. You like the Three Stooges, yeah, I'd have send you to the moon, like in the Honeymooners with the Jackie Lee. I'd have send you to the moon, Alice, to the moon, right? So you kind of have that kind of energy going. But you may really be a person who loved God and tried your best to let his light shine in you. But some days your light may be dim. And then you may have somebody who's walking in total darkness and have no light. But this particular day, they may be the kindest person and the most wonderful and lovely and most beautiful encounter you could have. So no human being is 100%. And I think this is where all of this information coming out, or that has thus come out, about the male escort, the Punisher, the drug dealer, One Stop. If you guys been keeping up with, you all know who these characters are. I'm like, man, this is already a Hollywood movie. One Stop, the Punisher, all this kind of crazy stuff. And when you're hearing about all this, at the end of the day, it's almost like, okay, I'm watching a very, totally insane, sexually perverse soap opera. That's what you really feel like. Like, okay, this is like a soap opera, for the Playboy channel. You just feel like that this is what you're getting. But does that mean that this man is, for what it seems like that the prosecution is charging, is this stuff ratcheted up to where they can really get him on these charges? Listen, anytime you're talking about RICO, right? Okay, let's look. You guys look that up. But essentially, your RICO charges is what it came into play back in the 1970s, I believe, in New York, to bring down like these New York crime bosses. And then that was used really primarily across the United States, primarily to bring down mafiosi. Okay. And so you're talking about racketeering. Okay. And you're talking about where you're dealing with some stuff that's, where people are running these huge enterprises. But now I do understand that there's elements of the RICO charges where it doesn't have to be this large enterprise. It could just even be down to individual. And I think that may be where the prosecution may be playing off of that side of the card, right? But if you're talking about sex trafficking, human trafficking, drug trafficking, kidnapping, enslavement. If you're talking about these high levels of this kind of stuff, I'm going to be honest with you guys. So far, week number 2, and week number 2 is almost over. We passed hump day. We're going into Thursday, Friday, and then we got the holiday, the Memorial Day holiday coming up. Guys, I don't, to me, it's falling short. It's leaving something left to be desired from the prosecution. And I think that the prosecution going to have to step it up. And here's why I'm saying that. Is because I'm thinking about this juror, the jury, okay? And now from what we understand is that the jury is obviously the jury is 12 people, right? It's always going to be 12 individuals. But the jury, as I understand, is 12 individuals. Eight of the 12 are men, okay? And of those, four of them are women, I believe. You guys can look it up, correct me if I'm wrong. But from what I understand of that is that four of the men are black men, okay? And then I believe there's four whites, four blacks, and then I believe there is I think there's two Latinos, one Asian API, I believe, maybe Asian Pacific Islander, maybe of East Indian descent. So again, why am I saying that? You're only dealing, you're dealing with a wide variety of people here. But what's troubling me for the prosecution, and again, I'm not necessarily saying I want to see Diddy go down. I feel that Diddy does deserve an honest, true day in court. Now he's having his day. The man deserves a fair trial. I would say anybody and everybody deserves a fair trial. And Sean definitely deserves that. Regardless of what you may think about him or what I may think about him on a personal tip, this guy deserves a fair trial. You may think he's worse than the dirt under the earth, and he may be. You may think he's Satan himself and straight out of the pit of hell, but he deserves a fair trial. And for what it can be said about that, he's got to get his fair trial. And if I'm looking at just the fairness of his trial, I'm telling y'all, unless the prosecution, and you guys can let me know how you feel about this, but unless the prosecution know that they've got about approximately 6 more weeks to really bring the house down, I'm gonna be honest with y'all. I don't see a conviction for Sean P. Diddy, Puff Daddy, Diddy, Love Combs. I don't see it. Bad Boy, Mr. Bad Boy himself. I don't see where they're going to be able to really show that heightened level. But again, it's 6 weeks out. There's a lot happening from day to day, with the exception of the weekends when the courts are obviously closed. So we don't know what is going to, we don't know what is going to be forthcoming from the prosecution. But as it stands, and again, it's early in the game. We're only a week and a half into it, a little bit beyond a half now of a week and a half. So almost a full 2 weeks at this. I'm going to be real with you guys. I got to see more. And the reason why I keep bring up the aspect of the jury, and I'm going to say this, you got 4 black guys on that jury. Okay, 4 black guys. And the reason why, and I think there's a black woman on there too. I think there's like 2 black women. Of the women, I think there's 4 women, and I know one of the women is Latina, of Hispanic descent, and I believe there's 2 black women, or maybe 3 black women. I believe so. And then I believe there's 1 white woman. You guys can look it up. Again, I'm trying to just remember from what I've seen in passing on this. But the reason why I keep bringing up there's 4 black men, because I feel as though that the black men are the real game changer on that jury. And the reason why I say I believe the black men are the real game changer on there, not just because Sean is a black man and not just because they're black men, but I feel as though is that in order for Diddy to get a mistrial, a hung jury, or even to get totally, exonerated, or even to receive lesser charge, all it takes is for one of those jurors to say, I'm not buying what the prosecution is selling. It don't take all of them, just take one. And I feel as though if anybody on there would probably make that kind of decision, I feel that, and this is not me being stereotypical, I feel it would probably come from one of the black men. Why? Because I think now you get into levels of historical trauma. Let's just be real. I'll quote this. There was a black woman that was on social media the other day, And she was saying that, well, black men, I don't think you guys have empathy towards women. You guys are always never believing women, da 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 da. And being a woman, I could definitely see her point on that to an extent. But then being a black woman, I couldn't see her point. And what I mean is this: I was torn by her statement. I think the woman in me was like, she's right. But the black in me says, hold on, sis. And I think black men have a level of historical, how can I say, trauma. Use that word again. Let's wear it out. Historical trauma that they carry more than I think anybody in, at least in the Western society, and more specifically the American society. Because black American men, let's make it very specific, black American men know what it's truly like more than any group of anybody, what it's like to be lied on for committing sexual crimes when they absolutely did not do it. Now, does that mean that everybody is innocent? No. And I think this is where some of the guys who are out here being egregious are trying to play that up too. Well, I'm a black guy, and historically, you know, we if we were thought to be looking at a white woman or whistling at somebody, people would lie on us and they would say, and these things are true. These things are absolutely true. So I think black men are going to always look at the situation, especially when it comes down to, you know, sexual, you know, crimes, men versus woman, woman versus man, and that thing. I think black men are going to be the ones to say, I need to see more evidence. I'm not going to just ride out with Me Too, and I'm not just going to say hashtag believe all women. Now, I know to a lot of women, and to us, that may sound bad. Because like I say, the woman in me say, well, why not believe all women? Why not? But then there's the black in me that says, but I understand why this one particular, you know, demographic of people, of citizens, are not going to have that innate response to say, just believe all women. Why? Because we've seen it so many times. So many times. And I'm not saying that there haven't been white guys who've been lied on. I'm thinking about, there was a huge case years back. It actually was a black young lady. She lied on some lacrosse players, some of these white guys at one of those Ivy League schools. You guys probably remember it. And then she turned around and said, yeah, I did lie on them, da 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 da. I was just trying to get some notoriety, you know. So it definitely happens to men of all races and colors. Don't get me wrong about that. But what I'm saying, more than any group of men, let me say that, black men absolutely know what that means in real time, okay, for a woman to accuse them of sexual crimes. And when those accusations and allegations have been patently false against them. And so that's why I think there is that mindset that for black American men in particular, they're not just going to phone it in on the idea, well, this is a woman crying before me. This is a woman that's, and again, that may make black American men come across as non-empathetic and sensitive to women and non-protective of women. And again, the woman in me understands why women may feel that. In particular, it makes me understand why a lot of black women, this woman who made that thing, she was a black woman. I can understand that as a woman. But as a black individual, I also understand why a lot of times black guys, it's not that they don't necessarily care about women's tears. I think they understand that sometimes women's tears can be fake. And women's tears can be fraudulent. And women's tears can be phony. And women's tears sometimes can be fugazi. Okay? And it can be false. And so I think because they're coming again from that level of trauma and that paradigm, black men are going to require, baby, you're going to have to bring the real to them before they straight up believe it. I'm just being real. And I think it's the four black guys. And let me be even more clear. I believe they said one of the black men may be of a ethnic heritage. So I'm not sure if he's a necessarily a black American guy. He may be a black American guy, but I think he may have some kind of island heritage. I don't know if it's from the West Indies or something like that, or maybe even from levels of just from some aspect of the diaspora, okay, or the diaspora, how you want to say that. Um of you know the black diaspora, let me just say it like that, right? So but I think with that particular gentleman, even maybe not as much as him, I'm thinking about those black American guys on there. And I already know that, listen, that case right there off the bat is fighting an uphill battle just with those brothers on that jury. And it's not to say that I don't think that black men can be fair and that black men can judge and rule righteously. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying because of the historical aspects of black men being accused of these types of things, okay, primarily racially, in racially charged and racially tinged environments, okay, black men are then going to require you to really have to prove your case. And again, I think if nothing else, that does speak to levels of absolute fairness. Because it's just like, hey, nah, you're not just going to sit here and cry and tell me that, I need to know. I want to know. Now, here's where I would say that may be somewhat of a downside to that from what I've seen. And this gets into something that I've been wanting to talk to you guys about is look up, if you guys are not familiar with it, but it's definitely something that I've heard about and I've read up on myself, and especially as recently, I was watching Nancy Grace, and one of her panelists actually mentioned this, and I said, oh yeah, I remembered that, but I couldn't fully remember what that aspect was, and that's a psychological term, which is called the Madonna whore complex, right? And then sometimes it's also referred to as the mistress whore complex, but it's something that comes from Sigmund Freud. And when I was in college, we took psychology. Listen, a lot of that stuff be deep, man. A lot of that stuff, they be hitting on stuff. I'm just being real. And so this is a very, without getting too deep into all the psychology, but look it up. You guys can see it on Wikipedia. You can look it up, look up the definition of the Madonna, sort of like the singer Madonna, but not that Madonna, but it's called the Madonna whore complex. And at the bottom line of it, the essence of that is that you're dealing with in most cases, men, not just men of color, but men in general, where there's this aspect that Sigmund Freud, he did some type of, psychoanalysis on men, on the men that he, I guess, had in this, I don't know if it was a study or a controlled environment. You guys have to read more on that. Or even if it was just a hypothesis. But it's definitely something that you definitely could see in many cases. That doesn't mean that all men have this, but what he basically posited was that there are men, and a lot of men, whether they're even conscious of this or cognizantly aware of this themselves, they operate from a Madonna whore paradigm when it comes to women. And what that essentially means is this, is that they look at women that either she's a Madonna or she's a whore. And if she's a Madonna, she's someone who is, she's to be honored and lauded and set on a pedestal and someone who is to be, I won't say necessarily praised, but someone who is truly considered honorable and dignified and, beatific. And that's why they call it the Madonna thing. She's holy. And so he loves that kind of woman. He admires her. He looks up to that kind of woman. And typically, men, they find, will put women in that Madonna category. And sometimes those women are who? It's your mother. It may be an aunt. It may be even sometimes if they got just a really good friend that's like a sister to them, that kind of thing, or their sister or their daughter or niece, usually a woman that they say, that woman is there. Or it could be, let's say a woman like a school teacher who really, an elder woman who was like, Miss Jones, she was my favorite school teacher. Miss Jones, she would just, my grandmother. So these kind of women hold a level of precedent with men and a level of presence with men that she's, she's, glorified, so to speak. She has been basically given sainthood. And that's why they use the term Madonna. And because of that, he will never see her in any kind of sexual light, rightfully so. Then there's the other women. And these women are all just whores. And these women are to be devalued and debased and deflowered sexually. Now, here's where the Madonna whore complex, according to Freud, I'm going somewhere with this, y'all, so hang in there with me on this. According to that, to what he posited on here is that, and what he theorized is that sometimes this Madonna whore complex actually affects men in non-familial ways with women. I mean, it's perfectly righteous and right and true not to look at, for a man not to view the women of his family in a sexual way. That's perfectly the righteous thing. So we're not saying that. But what we are saying is, we're not saying anything and, against that or antithetical to that. I'm being a little scientific tonight. But what Sigmund Freud was positing and concluding is, and theorizing, was that, guess what? Sometimes when men like a woman too much, when he sees her too pure, too virginal, too innocent, too clean cut, too ladylike, he can love her, but he won't want to be sexual with her because he almost looks like that, okay, I don't want to defile her. Whereas he can see another woman who he'll view as, well, she's like just smut. Okay, so I can be sexual with her. I can be freely sexual with her. And what he was drawing the conclusion on that is that this also kind of, trickles into, it's not the word I want to look at, but it gets over into even sometimes a marital situation. That this is why sometimes when men get married, they'll marry their wife, and yes, obviously they may have a sexual relationship and a sexual attraction to their wife, but ultimately, this is why some men, they don't even understand why they'll cheat. They'll call up the prostitute or go to the strip club or get an escort. Because once a man really loves a woman, and I'll just sum it up how he said it, he who he loves, the woman that he loves, he finds it difficult to be sexual with. And the one that he does not love, he finds it easier to be sexual with. So that which he loves, he doesn't want to be sexual with. But that who he wants to be sexual with, he finds it difficult to love. And what he was really coming down to, the final blow of his hypothesis on this is why men tend to flow from that paradigm. And it's a very unconscious thing in a great deal of men, and that they don't even understand that they're flowing from that space. You know what I'm saying? And he was saying that not all men, but a great deal of men flow from that paradigm, and they themselves, they do this to kind of help their own mind to not have to struggle. Like there's an internal struggle of a back and forth of, okay, can a woman that I'm sexual with, can I love her and respect her? A woman that I love and respect, can I be sexual with her? Well, this is getting confusing. So here's what I'll do. I'll put you in the whore category and I'll put you in the Madonna category. And what he really drew the like I said, the final blow is that most men probably fit that paradigm. And I was like, man, you guys truly study the Madonna whore complex. There's another complex that you guys should check out. Check out the Oedipus complex. That gets into mother-son relationships. Man, that stuff is be real deep. But now, why am I going to the Madonna whore complex? I took a lot of time to draw from that reference. I believe, you all, a lot of that plays into the pathology and the psychology on why it's harder, right, for sometimes men to see a woman like Cassie or other women if she's not completely the perfect victim. Okay, it's hard for men to empathize with that. And that's really, I went around the block just to go next door, but I really wanted to take my time with you all to understand that, which is why a lot of times, if a woman is not, and a lot of lawyers know this, a lot of, criminal profilers know this, a lot of people, expert psychologists know this. They know that it's a lot of times it's very difficult for men to empathize with a woman unless she can really prove that she is perfect. And there again, there's no such thing as a perfect person. So there's no such thing as a perfect victim. Very rarely. Which is the reason why a lot of times men don't believe that. I've even heard some men say, well, you can't rape your wife. There's no such thing as date rape. Because in their mind, well, and remember, we talked about this a week ago. We know where consent begins, where does it end? Right? And does it ever end, really? And to what extent throughout that process is consent, happening? And the reason why I'm saying that is because there's some guys that believe they cannot. Excuse me, I use that word, but I'm just saying grape. Y'all know what I mean. There's some that they don't believe that they can sexually violate their wife. I'll say that. They don't believe that, hey, well, we're dating. So they grapple with those issues, right? And so a lot of times when a woman will say, well, no, I knew this guy, we were dating. Oh, well, that didn't really happen to her. So unless a woman can say, hey, this guy snatched me up off the street, bust me upside my head, pulled me into a dark alleyway, and took full command of me against my will, men are more apt and likely to believe that, because they'll say, oh my God, that poor lady. Why? Because she's the perfect victim. She's the perfect victim. But let me tell you where even a lot of times she may not be perfect. Let's say that this woman is walking around, she got on a mini skirt, she got on high heel boots, she got her cleavage showing, she got on, a tight mini skirt, and she's leaving a nightclub. And a guy grabs her and snatches her into a back alley. There's a lot of men who grab her. Well, she should have been dressed that way. I'm not saying it's right, but she should have been dressed that way. As if what a woman wears should give any authority or any viability or any level of, I'm trying to think of the word I'm trying to think about, any level of okayness, okay? That gives anybody the right to violate them. If she's walking out there with her underoos, that doesn't give somebody the right to enter her personal space and to touch her body against her will. I don't care what she's wearing. I don't care if she's wearing a plastic bag. And I don't care, like I said, she could be skipping around in her Victoria's Secrets or her underoos. It doesn't matter. But you got a lot of times, again, men are operating unconsciously from, not even subconsciously, unconsciously, from this Madonna whore paradigm, this Madonna whore complex. And so this is why it's so hard a lot of times to get convictions, right? Which, guys, I'm going to try to go maybe about another 10, 20 minutes and try to wrap it up. So why then was it easy to convict R. Kelly, convict Bill Cosby, but then it got overturned after a few years? And why I think it's going to be harder to convict Sean P. Diddy Combs? Well, let me tell you guys why. Let's look at R. Kelly. One of the things that R. Kelly absolutely, where this is why Robert is where he is, Kales is where he is, because too many witnesses, even people who ran in his own circle, too many times was able to prove, and a lot of the witnesses and things like that, it was too much evidence, against this guy, that you are dealing with minors, okay? And as we know, thank God, our laws say minors cannot consent to sexual activity. I don't care what that person is saying. And I respect that aspect of the law. If you're 15, I don't care if you, what was that song? Seems like you're ready, looks like you're ready. I don't care about that. I don't care about that. You know what I'm saying? So if I don't care if you're 15, 16, if you are not at the age of consent, and you may have a body that looks better than a 35 or 40-year-old, okay? You may look older than and beyond your years, but the realities are, if you are a minor, you cannot consent to sexual relations. Point blank, period. Period. And for this cause, this is why R. Kelly is where he is, which is why I can't understand the people who can still celebrate R. Kelly. I can't celebrate R. Kelly anymore. I love a lot of his music still, but I definitely feel some type of way about him. I don't hate the brother. I'm praying that he gets his life turned around. Hopefully one day he'll see his freedom again. But R. Kelly is where he needs to be. Because again, he wasn't convicted off of just somebody, running their mouth. This was evidence that they were able to prove, okay? So again, I know that black men have had a historical thing where people have lied and thrown the book at them, but we also got to know that sometimes there are some black guys out here doing bogus. And unfortunately, a lot of times the criminal-minded black guys will try to use that historical aspect to make people, to what they say, reasonable doubt. Well, I'm a black guy, and you know how they treat us. Well, okay, I could definitely ride with that. But just the way you want to look at the scrutiny on this woman, let me look at the scrutiny on you, sir. We got to look and see, did you do it? So in R. Kelly's case, let's be clear. Let's understand why he is where he is. They were able to bring, I believe, RICO charges against him, and those charges stuck. But the reason why they stuck, because it's absolutely came out in his cases that Kels was, setting up all kind of intricate stuff and had a consortium of people working with him, and doing stuff and moving and shaking on his behalf and bringing these women in and back and forth and bringing in these little girls. And because remember, it wasn't just girls, these underage young ladies. Kels was also dealing with some adult, women. But, even those women were like, hey, man, this guy would lock us up in bedrooms for days. We'd be wanting to get something to eat. This guy wouldn't let us leave and this kind of stuff. And, we tried to escape, and my mama tried to come see me. And see, this is where you go wrong. And this is where Kels went wrong, which is reason why I'm saying, from what I'm hearing from Diddy's case, Diddy ain't doing none of that. I have not seen one person said that anybody Sean dealt with was a minor. Kudos to him on that. If I'm looking for any bright side at this point, okay? Because the stuff is so horrendous. Let me tip my hat to him where I can. I'll tip my hat to Sean on that. I haven't heard about, anybody, at least not thus far. But according to this case, I don't think there's any that Sean is guilty or been even alleged of being guilty of having dealt with any minors. So tip your hat to him on that, okay? Raise your glass to him on that, okay? The other thing is, and this is where it's getting sticky, because when in Sean's case, there's these RICO charges, that, hey, that this is an enterprise, this is some, cross state line stuff. Now, I'm going to tell you guys something. From what I been hearing, okay, like I said, I'm getting all my stuff secondhand, third-handed, fourth-handed, just the way you guys can. I'm not in New York. I'm not at the case, okay? But you guys can hear the same outlets I'm hearing and listening to, and some of you guys probably already are. What I'm gathering from that, the only thing I see so far that I feel that the prosecution has a level of shot where it's really through the drug side of it. I really can't see the human trafficking, the sex trafficking. I can't really see that. Only time that I think you can somewhat kind of, and I mean, I don't want to say you're overreaching. I think the reach may reach. The reach is reaching, but I think it may reach and touch. I think, which is the reason why I think the prosecution keeps showing that video of Sean, yanking that poor child up. I hate that video, snatching that poor child up as she's creeping off to the elevator. You could clearly see, with Cassie with her hoodie on, she's trying to creep off. She got a little bag. She's standing at that elevator and she's trying to, you can tell how she's easing off. And then here comes Sean running out there, Diddy running out there with his towel on and, acting like a maniac and snatching the girl down and then stomping her and all this kind of stuff. I mean, come on. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. Now, supposedly, he said, well, she stole his phone. Look, man, you know what? I'm not buying what he's selling on that, okay? But at the end of the day, if that was really the case, then snatch your phone back and let her get on the elevator and go about her business. You're not going to snatch her back and drag her down the hall and then throw a vase at her, and then you dragging this girl back to where you are. And that, to me, again, that if nothing else, and I think this may be the reason why they keep showing that video, I think if nothing else, I think that's the prosecution's way of trying to send home the message of, okay, Sean Diddy Combs, when Cassie was trying to leave, don't be so deceived by just the domestic violence aspect of it. And what I mean by deceived is this. I hear a lot of people say, well, we definitely see that he's a woman beater. He's knocking women out, certainly not Cassie out, things like that. And being in a relationship with somebody is not any justification of doing that. Okay. So people have said, well, he's not on trial for domestic violence. He's not on trial for physical abuse. And that's true. And battery and assault. He's not on trial for that. And I don't think that's why the prosecution keeps showing that. I think they're showing it when it comes to that aspect for the shock value. You'll see like, oh man, what kind of creep are you? You're snatching this little girl up like this and then stomping her and kicking her and dragging her. Come on, man. You wouldn't even do a cat or a dog that way. And if you do, you're a disgusting human being anyway. So the fact that you would even do somebody like that just shows me your level of, you really need to, my God. You need Jesus. My God, today you need Jesus. We all need him, my God, today. I need him, my God, today. But baby, you need to come on in this house because, Sean, that's ridiculous to do anybody like that. And I would hope that his mother, unfortunately, she got to sit there and watch that. I would hope his mother be like, my God, I thought I raised something better in you than that. I mean, that's just beyond. Okay, unconscionable and beyond ridiculousness. However, I think the prosecution is showing that to show that when Cassie was attempting to leave, he didn't let her go, which to me undoes his argument. Well, she stole something and I was trying to get it back. Okay, so if you trying to get it back, unzip her bags, pat her down like you the cops, check her little pockets, grab your phone, and guess what? Let her go and get on that elevator. And you go take your little self in your towel and you go back your way and let her go her way. But where you went wrong, Sean, is not just beating on this girl, because that's not what you're on trial for. You're on trial for, guess what? Sex trafficking, holding, kidnapping. So that right there shows you that you've got something in you that will hold somebody against their will. Now again, will all of that translate to the jury? I don't know. But here's what I do know is that's certainly showing you a propensity towards that kind of thing, right? Because if you're a person who's willing to do that, you're more than likely a person who's willing to do other stuff. However, what even Cassie herself does, Cassie actually wound up being a good witness, not just for the prosecution, but in some ways even for the defense, for Diddy. Because here's why. The one thing that I can see where Sean definitely got better sense than Robert, and I'm not trying to put down Kels, I'm just saying the difference, the distinction, even though these are all black men, and we're going to get into Cosby in a minute, the difference between, I know that you guys say, oh, they're all black men, and they're all wealthy, and they're all successful, and they just trying to take down the brother. That's not it. Y'all got to get out of that. You guys got to look at it. Just the way them four black men going to look at women and be like, hey, you know, and I'm not saying that this is a tit for tat thing. I'm saying everybody needs to look at the evidence. I don't care if you're black, white, Puerto Rican, Chinese, male or female. If you're going to be fair, fairness is fair. Right is right. So you have to look at the evidence. You have to be evidence based. And that's why I say I agree with black men on that. You can't just say, oh, well, women are crying and hashtag believe all women. You know, hashtag I want to believe all women. Okay. And I'm a woman myself. Hashtag I want to believe all women. But here's another hashtag. Not all women are moving in spirit and in truth, okay? So because there are women who will lie, does that mean most women lie about these things? I don't believe so. I personally don't believe so. But does that mean that all women are telling the truth? Absolutely not. Are there women who have shown and are prone to lying against men in those matters? Absolutely. So we got to check it out, okay? But on the flip side of that, men do lie as well. Because all men, the Bible say all men are liars. Okay? He said, let every man be a liar, let the word of God be true. So everybody's guilty of lying. You, me, everybody. Well, I just told a little white lie. I just put in a little bit. No. If it ain't the truth, it's a lie. Okay? So let's get back to this thing. So this is why I feel that the prosecution is showing that video, but I feel like they're going to have to bone up a little bit more and give us more than what they're showing if indeed they're trying to make these RICO charges stick. Now, the only thing that I walked away from that I feel that they may be able to really lean into, and again, we don't know. We're 6 weeks out, you know, what they will truly finally bring their conclusion to. But I'll say this, the drugs, because from what I've, got a chance to hear yesterday's testimony, I didn't hear it, but, the excerpts and from the case and things like that, transcripts, I should say. And there's one channel, it's called That Surprise Witness. Boy, that's a great channel too. You guys check these people's channels out. They gonna give it to you straight. I think it's called That Surprise Witness. And boy, she just gives it to you in real time, man. This little white chick is the best. She's hilarious because, she has these little pink little ear things on. It's cute. And she just be laying into it. And she's giving it to you literally in real time as it's happening, as tweets are coming out, as the news is breaking, as transcripts are being made available. And so you're getting it like right there on the spot. Now, from what I understand is, there was Diddy, asking people to get drugs and, hey, you bringing drugs and bringing prescriptions and things like that. So now I definitely can see the RICO on the drug front. I can definitely see that because at the end of the day, you first of all, you can't be running drugs. So that right then and there is criminal. But then you get into a whole other aspect and another whole layer to that when you're now saying, hey, I need, my assistant to go over here and go over there and, meet that guy, and you get over here and you bring me that. You know what I'm saying? And you go get that and you bring me this and you go holler at that person and get me a prescription. When you start doing that kind of stuff, now you're moving. Now you're moving wrong. Okay? So when you start doing stuff like that, now you're definitely getting yourself in a situation where you're now starting to move in drug trafficking. And drug trafficking, ladies and gentlemen, is a part of RICO. And drug trafficking doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be a drug dealer yourself. You could just be the drug user. Say, hey, man, I'm getting somebody to get off of a plane, go over there, go get me these drugs, jump in your car, go drive there, come back, hand it to me. So anytime you're doing that kind of stuff, understand what you're really doing. And I think a lot of times there's this level where people, all of us, we don't understand the law. So a lot of times people are moving and grooving and they don't really think about what you're doing. But the law is like, yo, you're breaking the law. You didn't even understand that. So again, I don't know if Sean was aware of that per se. I think a lot of times when people are dealing with addiction and dealing with all kind of vice, they're just thinking about the fix. They're just thinking about the gratification of it all. And again, they're not moving in a level of wisdom. They're just thinking about, okay, I got to get this fixed. I gotta get my groove. I got to get my thing jumped off. So they're not even thinking with any type of cognizant awareness. They're just not. They're just moving and busting moves. Meanwhile, though, as they're doing that, they're breaking laws. So from that standpoint, basically to draw the distinction between R. Kelly's RICO case and Sean Diddy's RICO case, they got Robert cold blooded, just straight up, straight down. Okay, from the aspect of the minors to the aspect of women testify. Hey man, this dude locked me up. Even some of the people like, well, yeah, we was told not to let so on and so forth. We couldn't. You know what I'm saying? So Kale's moved totally wrong and ridiculous in that. Sean, I don't see that aspect. Not from the sexual side. We see a lot of wild and crazy sick stuff, but we don't see that. So that's why I'm not sure how they're going to rope in, if they're trying to rope it in that aspect, if they're basing their RICO charges off of sex trafficking and human trafficking and things like that. I can't see that aspect, not fully, not yet, unless that's to come. But what I do see is definitely the drug aspect. And I was talking to a very, very good friend of mine. He raised up another good point. With something where, there was something that came out, I believe, in the transcripts where Diddy was saying something to somebody about a tape. It was like, oh, I could use that against you now, Well, now that gets into extortion, and and threats and coercion, okay? Those things like that. Yeah, I think there was somebody who had to pay for a tape, or it was being threatened that you got to pay for this tape or keep me from. So, when you start getting into that stuff, now you are getting into extortion, you are getting into coercion, and all those aspects also fall under RICO. So again, I don't see, as outrageous as Diddy's case is sexually speaking, and all of the salaciousness of that, and all the tabloid junkiness and messiness of that, I don't see the prosecution making a strong stand on that, at least not as of yet. And I feel like this: if that's where they're looking to plant, if that's the hill they're planting their flag on, man, they better really tighten it up, because I just don't see that aspect at this point. However, I feel as though if they are planting their flag on the heel of, hey, there's drugs happening here, there's drug running here, there's threats about videos not coming out, and this kind of thing, and if you're making threats to with porn videos of people and things like that, that's an actual crime now, y'all. So you can't threaten people and said, hey, I got you on camera, you doing all this freaky nasty stuff with me, but I'm gonna send it to your job, or I'm gonna put it out there to the, if you're doing stuff like that, that's a crime. And that's definitely gets into levels of extortion, levels of coercion. So you can't do that, which is one reason why, let me just take a moment and just give a news flash in a momentary break here. This is what I'm saying, y'all, is this, please, y'all, I run my mouth about this stuff, but please, get some scruples about yourselves in this bedroom. I saw some goofy guy. Well, I ain't going to say that, Lord. I saw a gentleman tonight post something on one of his social media pages, still talking about, yeah, she wants you to choke her out while pardon my French, y'all, we're going to be a little adult, so if the kids in the room, cover their ears and ask them to step out kindly for a second. Hey, she wants you to choke her and hit her from the back. Look at you. Yeah, seriously, y'all still on that, huh? Y'all keep on choking these people out in these bedrooms. Okay, and well, she asking me to choke up. You should, sir. Let me talk to the men real quick. I want to let every man know. I don't care your race. I don't care your color. I don't care your height. I don't care none of that. I don't care if you're rich. I don't care if you're broke. I don't care if you're a Pookie. I don't care if you're a Peter. Let me ask you this. Let me tell you. I'm not asking anything. Let me say this to y'all. If you have any woman who is telling you or asking you to choke her out or put your hands around my throat and choke me. Y'all, as a woman, like I said, who have been intimate, there is, and again, that's me. I'm not asking everybody to be like me. But I'm asking you men, if you, and I'm gonna talk to you women in a minute. Ladies, hold on. Coming around, circling back to y'all. But fellas, what I'm going to tell you gentlemen is this. If you get any woman telling you, I want you to put your hands around my throat and choke me and pull me by my hair, please get your man right and be like, absolutely not. That's what we're not going to do. Well, why not? Because no. Well, I promise you, I'm into that. I'm not going to tell. Okay. Yeah, but here's what's not. I know you not going to tell. I'll never tell. Remember that movie, y'all? I'll never tell. Yeah, I know you ain't never going to tell, baby, because I ain't never going to do that with you. So let the record show. Men, get some scruples about you. Don't go in them bedrooms acting crazy with these women. Now, ladies, let me have a one-on-one conversation with y'all real quick. Ladies, stop asking men to do stuff like that. It don't take all that to get you off. Now, I know they're saying that this is some part of the kink community of asphyxiation where you feel like you're about to lose your breath. You know, can you keep, y'all know I be thinking about songs like I said, can you keep up? Baby boy, make me lose my breath. Pray tonight, make me lose my breath. Come on. This ain't no Destiny song, child. Destiny Child song. You know, asphyxiation. And that's part of some, and y'all got to think about this. Y'all start doing start asking God to show you why you got these thoughts in your mind. Start asking the Lord to show you. Well, I don't believe in the Lord, but he believe in you. Start asking him to show you. God, why I want that done? Why I'm asking this man to choke me? Why do I want somebody to put their hands up? I don't want nobody putting their hands around my neck, not even for play. Not even for play. Because guess what? I don't trust that. Because I know this. Guess what? If you doing it for play, then that gives you the message that you can do it for not for play. And we're not going to do that. So ladies, y'all stop doing that. If you asking these men to do crazy stuff, goofy stuff like that, stop asking that. Okay? Because you sending a dual message to that man. Because trust, you may not think that you are. But if he feel it's okay to choke you in the moment of the heat of passion, baby, you best know. You running the risk, baby girl. You running the risk. Piss that man off. And see how, let me go on. All right, y'all, let me wrap this up. Now, the Cosby case, and let me wrap it up with this. Now, why did Cosby get arrested? Why? Now, Cosby didn't have RICO charges against him, so let's be clear. This is different, but since you guys are bringing up the Cosby, bringing up Kales, that's why I'm dealing with each of these cases, since everybody talking about Diddy. Cosby did not have a RICO charge against him. What Cosby did was this. Cosby had did a deposition. Y'all can look it up. Cosby was told that if he shared with what he was doing in this deposition, that he would have immunity. Okay. And so he said, okay, cool. That's the deal. As long as you guys are giving me immunity, I will, say what I believe to be true. And they've got the video out there. So during Cosby's deposition of what was happening between him and these young women, and he admitted, he said, hey, I'm guilty of adultery and things like that. Okay. Because he's been married to Camille forever and a day, but didn't respect his marriage. You know what I mean? Hope he repent. We all better be repenting, y'all. But what he was saying was, hey, this is just the way we would, kind of, get into our moment, get into the swing of things. And, these women were consenting according to him. He charged that they were consenting, that he could slip them a Mickey. That's what the old timers call it, slip them a Mickey, a little Spanish fly. You know what I'm saying? Some people call them roofies, but what we also call them as date rape drugs, rufinol, and I know they got other stuff out here now, okay? Where you slip them that, you put it in their drink, and he said the women knew I was doing it, according to him. I'm saying according to him, okay? But he shared that information on his deposition. And in exchange for sharing that, Cosby was given through his attorneys, and he was legally promised that, okay, we're going to give you immunity, Mr. Cosby. And he went out there and told it. But once he did, then prosecutors turned around and they said, hey, now we're going to file against you. And now we got the proof. And so they kind of did a little sleight of hand with him, right? And that's why he wound up going to jail, which is the very reason why he was able to get out of jail. Because of why? Because you can't do that. You can't promise a person immunity for coming forward and telling the truth, or insofar as they see it, right? Because I'm sure some of the women would argue that they were not aware. Again, I'm just saying from insofar as he saw it and as he was giving his part of the deposition, he was like, hey, yeah, I did do that. So he was making admission that, yeah, he was, toking these ladies up. Okay. And they said that, some of these women were catatonic. And then again, I don't understand that. Bill Cosby, what is it in you that you want to lay there? You want to have your way with a body that's almost lifeless. Again, y'all, there's a lot of pathology going on here. There's a lot of spiritual and mental and emotional damage. And sometimes we need to take the time out and ask ourselves, why do I want to do this? Why is my little flesh into that? I'm serious. Anyway, so because of that, okay, prosecution, they reneged on the agreement, okay? And Cosby had a dynamite attorney, okay? And that gentleman, black gentleman, that fella said, hold on, stop the press, it's time out. Y'all gave my client immunity. And you took it back, and you can't take it back. That's almost like double jeopardy in the law. You can't do that. If you say you're going to go ahead and let him tell the truth, or insofar as he sees it, and give his deposition, and you gave him immunity, you can't then use that against him. To do that is illegal. And that's why Bill Cosby got out of jail. It wasn't because Bill Cosby was found innocent, okay, or not guilty of what he was being charged for. We need to be clear, y'all. That's not why he got out. Okay? He got out because the case got overturned. It was overturned and he was released because guess what? You cannot be a prosecutor, and you cannot, under the law, being in the law, and sit up and say, hey, I'm going to give you immunity. Be forthcoming and tell me insofar as you see it. Tell me what you did. And you tell the person what you did. And then they say, oh, now I'm going to use that against you. Now you're going to jail. Can't do that. That's why he got out. Okay. So these are the differences and the nuances. Okay. So understand, ladies and gentlemen, this is what this is. But I'm going to wrap it up with this, y'all. Hey, thank you for listening. I will come back and give you guys more on as this case shape up in the next 6 weeks, good Lord willing. But I'm going to be honest with y'all. I am curious to see how the prosecution is going to really bring this thing home. And because I'm going to tell you, all Diddy need is just one person, just one. He don't need 2, he don't need 3, he don't need 4 or 5. He just need one little person to sit up and say, I ain't buying what the prosecution is selling. And that was that reasonable doubt. So they're going to have to really pick their poison and really pick the hill that they're going to plant their flag on. Or they say, the hill you're choosing to die on, they're going to have to really figure out which hill that is. And if the hill, I'm saying, in my opinion, if the hill they're picking is this thing about human trafficking or sex trafficking, in Diddy's case, I can't see that. I can't see that. If that's the hill that they're planting their flag on. Again, I don't know. But if that's the hill that they're planting their flag on, that will truly be the hill that this case will die on, because I can't see that. Do I see that this man is definitely a very degenerate, vile, any word you can, like I said, again, anything we would want to call him, anything and everything but a child of God. But I hope we can call him a child of God, because I hope that maybe this will be Sean's wake-up call. Sean, change your life. Change your life, son. Change your life, brother. You can't do it on your own. You're going to have to ask God to help you and get the help you need. And all things are possible with God. But use this as your moment. Change your life. Be that spiritual priest and example before your children, and hopefully your grandchildren, as time will wear on. But I'm telling y'all, listen, I can't see it so far on that unless they know more than what, and I'm sure they do. But I will tell you this: if the case had to end today, right now, I would say the only thing that I could see that they could get him on would be for the drugs. And the possible, the coercion of those videos. Because you can't hold something over somebody's head. If you see them doing something like, well, now you know I got this video now, you better, hey, you can't do that. Because if you're doing that, that is being coercive. That is using coercion to make somebody, to do something that you want them to do, or not do something that they otherwise would do. So you're trying to hold power over them. You're trying to hold something over them. And then when you start trying to put money value to it, that gets into extortion. So we need to better understand what these things are in the law. So anyway, y'all, that's all I got to say. Love you guys. Let's keep praying for one another, and let's keep loving one another. Peace.